James Gunn has revealed the vision, or at least a glimpse at the beginning of the new DC studios and projects we can look forward to in the near future. In this video I'm going to break down each one and give my thoughts. It's going to get weird, so let's go. What's up, Nerdgenic Nation? Resident superhero nerd Aaron Waller here, and as I mentioned in that intro, today we're going to be breaking down the announcement from DC Studios and James Gunn that we've all been highly anticipating. He said he was going to announce it in January. Of course, he waited till the last day to do it, but nonetheless, we're still going to break it down and talk about it and have some fun doing so. Now, they're going to be doing things that are going to be spanning across connected stories, supposedly across animation, gaming, film, television, and essentially all things DC will somewhat cross over to some degree or another. I have some reservations about it. We're going to break all that down, but there's also going to be some information about some announcements that were made, not necessarily in this announcement video, but kind of along with it as it was made. Now, in this announcement video, Gunn discusses how things like the Batman, Joker, and Teen Titans Go, they'll be considered Elseworld stories and be able to continue their stories without affecting the main continuity of the DC universe. He then discussed the remaining upcoming DC slate of Shazam 2, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2. He described them as leading into things but was also extremely vague about them. He did mention Shazam was pretty much his own thing, how The Flash would reset the DC universe, which was not confirmed exactly how or if that relates to their plans, and mentions how Aquaman 2 leads into their new DCU. And this first chapter will be titled Gods and Monsters, no relation to the DC animated Justice League movie. Now, as I mentioned, DC Studios will weave video games, animation, television, and film. Nothing was really discussed about video games, so let's go ahead and first talk about animation. There was only one animation project that I noted, and that was the animated series called the Creature Commandos. This is about as close as DC's Guardians of the Galaxy crossed with Warner Bros. Monsters as you can get. There's a human, a werewolf, a vampire, Frankenstein's monster, and often a rotating door of other classic creatures based on monsters on the team as well. I think that this could be rather interesting as it mashes a few things that I actually like all into one, which is pretty much a great way to get right to my heart. But I also feel like this is pretty much right up James Gunn's alley, as he's pretty much done the same exact format several times now, both with Marvel and DC. Now on to television in live action. First up is Waller, which is centered around Viola Davis's Amanda Waller. Now, I'm definitely happy that Viola Davis is staying as Amanda Waller. I mean, I don't really see anybody else in the role, not that there couldn't be another person, but I mean, she's embodied the role so well. She did it in Peacemaker working with Gunn, so it doesn't really surprise me that she's back. But I think that her continuation and having a story solely focused on her will be kind of fun. It will allow for other universes to, or not necessarily universes, but other characters to sort of come in and work with her. Probably, most likely, the Peacemaker being the first one. Peacemaker characters, rather, as they did already work with her in both the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker series. But they can also incorporate her in some Batman stuff, or bring in some Superman stories, or some other things that kind of come across the DC universe that can kind of be incorporated here and still work within that, because she's got her fingers in so many pies that she can probably be in any storyline and it would fit perfectly. Next up is Lanterns, a series focused on Green Lantern, specifically Hal Jordan and John Stewart, and was described as true detectives but space cops. Now, to be completely honest with you, I've never been a massive Green Lantern fan. Not that there's anything against it, there's some stories I enjoy, others not so much. He's just not quite my cup of tea, and this goes pre Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. I actually didn't mind that movie so much, but I saw it when I was younger, so we'll leave that out of the conversation for now. But for the most part, I feel like this could be intriguing, but there's been so many other Green Lantern projects that have been sort of in the works or series about to be made. This is supposed to go on HBO Max. There was already supposed to be an HBO Max series for Green Lanterns in the works. I don't know if this is the same thing, if they're pivoting. I don't really know. Not much information was given about it. But for the most part, I hope it does well. I hope it's going to be super awesome and be like he described it, as true detectives but with space cops, because that's essentially what Green Lantern is. But I hope that it's going to be something exciting, very drama-driven, very much like The Last of Us, or something to that aspect, where it's not solely focused on being lighthearted. And I feel like having the balance of John Stewart with Hal Jordan will make that happen. But I think as time goes on and it continues to get closer, this might be the most real chance of another Green Lantern happening anytime soon. So fingers crossed that it actually works out. And next we have Paradise Lost, which will be taking place on Themyscira and was described as kind of like a Game of Thrones style with Westeros. Now for this one, I really don't know how to feel because I feel like Diana is probably the most interesting aspect of Themyscira. Yes, it's great if you want to do a Game of Thrones style series, but I feel like that's kind of what everyone's going for right now. Kind of like when Breaking Bad was really popular, everybody wanted to make the next Breaking Bad. Now everybody kind of wants to make the next Game of Thrones. Amazon Prime did it with the Lord of the Rings series, and now everybody else wants to do it too. It's going to be kind of reach a point where it's going to be okay, when is enough enough? But I feel like that with this one, if there's any chance, Themyscira is just not that interesting to me by itself. Because they're all very single-minded, there's always been that thought process of leave the outside world, we're going to focus on ourselves, obviously the superior beings in this case, and we'll train and do all this other stuff. I don't know what kind of drama of stories can be incorporated here, not that there can't be, but Diana was always the most interesting aspect, being Wonder Woman, having to go out and explore the world, kind of have those adventures with the outside world or man or technology or whatever the case may be, and her adventures there. Themyscira itself is kind of a rocky ground, and I don't know how much more interesting it could get other than like what happened with Zack Snyder's Justice League, where the battle was brought to Themyscira for a purpose. Other than that, I don't really know how to feel, and I'm not really looking forward to it. And finally, the last of the live action series, which I, and I'm sure many of my fellow nerds are excited about, Booster Gold. Now, Booster Gold is a fan favorite character that I've already done a history of video on, so if you want to find out more about the character, go ahead and check out that video after this one. But he's such a fun and wacky character that this series might be one of the most exciting things probably since Peacemaker. I'm not necessarily saying that's going to be along the same lines, but I feel like if you could go above and beyond, just go wacky, just go balls to the wall crazy, Booster Gold would probably be the next person after Peacemaker if you wanted to do it. But either way, I'm really looking forward to this series, and like I said, I'm sure plenty of other nerds are going to be looking forward to it as well. He's been highly anticipated for a long time, and he's finally on the way. So now let's go ahead and move on to the final category, which is the biggest, and I saved it for last for a reason, which is film. Now there's a lot to talk about in this category, so I've decided to do it a little bit differently than the past other ones that I just talked about. Now I'm going to be talking about it in terms of what I'm least excited about to what I'm most excited about. So let's go ahead and talk about which film I'm least anticipating of this list so far. And the thing that I'm least looking forward to has probably got to be The Authority. This is about a group of superheroes who are looking to correct the world by any means necessary. Now this one very much looks like a James Gunn project. He even says in the announcement video that this is a passion project of his, which I totally get if that's exciting for him. This kind of just looks like a James Gunn project. It has James Gunn's name all over it. It's Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe some instances of Watchmen here and there, but I definitely feel like it has the makings to be a massive hit, but I really don't know that much about them, and I myself am going to have to do quite a bit of research and reading. Luckily, I'll have a little bit of time to do so, to be able to catch up, and you guys want to make sure you follow along and subscribe so you don't miss out when I do have those announcements and want to explain more, so when you have those questions, we can answer them. But in the meantime, I just feel like it's sort of not that exciting because it just feels too James Gunny. I don't even know if that's a word or an ism or whatever you want to call it, but I feel like this just has James Gunn's name written all over it. It can be great, but I'm just still not that excited about it because I already feel like I've seen it before. Up next is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is an intriguing one, also one that I haven't read but we'll have to do a deeper dive into now. But it's about Supergirl and her having the opposite, less idealistic life that Superman would end up having. It honestly sounds super intriguing, the way that they sort of describe it, that she's sort of based on Krypton and sort of like that destroyed version of it, while Clark is off living this sort of idealistic life. So being able to see that will be very interesting. Again, I have to read it to be able to really give you much more information. I think it only came out within the past year or two, so I did happen to miss that one. But again, I will just have to read into it in order to give that information to you, and if I'm really excited for it. But as for now, I'm just kind of optimistic, cautiously so, I guess, that it will be good because it does sound so different. But it also kind of gives me, for some reason, like a Megamind vibe, like when the two ships crash into each other and then Megamind goes one way and Metro Man goes the other way and lives that idealistic life. So it's going to be kind of intriguing to see how that will play out. I don't think it's going to be like Megamind at all necessarily, considering I think she's on a completely different planet. She's still on Krypton, but how that sort of development of the character and how the evolution beyond just that singular movie will be, and being able to have Supergirl and the next character, which is, spoiler alert, Superman, will be intriguing as well. Alright, so I lied. Superman is not actually going to be the next one up. I do have one more before that I forgot about and had to go back and double check my notes. So there's another big gun coming in, not James Gunn necessarily, but a DC character, which is Swamp Thing. Yet another character that I did a history of video on. So if you want to check out the history of Swamp Thing, the comic book history of Swamp Thing, check out that video after this one. So you have plenty of stuff to watch on the channel after this video. But Swamp Thing, I think I'm the most cautiously optimistic about because it's had such sort of a checkered past. Now, there's been some good things with the character, there's been some bad things with the character. He's primarily been panned whenever anybody's tried to adapt him. If I thought anybody could do it, it was probably going to end up like Guillermo del Toro or something. But because that never came to light with like a Justice League Dark, I'm just going to have to put my faith into James Gunn because he does do weird characters very well. So not necessarily that he's taking the helm on it, but because he's the one that's going to be leading this front of projects, that's kind of why I'm putting the blame or the attention towards him, at least for now. But I feel like because this character has had those iterations, both loved and hated, critically panned but audience loved, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult situation, a little bit of a tough sell being able to get this character onto the big screen. I think it's very possible, again, very much like previous characters talking about with Green Lantern, this is the best chance this character will probably ever have, at least any time in the near future, to get on the screen, whether that be small screen, big screen. The fact that it's big screen is awesome, and I hope that it's kind of in the same vein as like a Werewolf by Night. Don't expect it to be, but if it was, I thought that would be pretty cool. Okay, so now we're finally going to move on to the heavy hitters. There's two massive ones. They're obviously DC staples, so of course I saved the best for last, and we're going to be talking about one before the other for a very specific reason. One's my favorite, so I have to kind of set that aside. So we're going to have to talk about first Superman Legacy. Now, there's no announcements for casting or anything here, but the interesting piece that I find is that they use art from All-Star Superman, which was a story essentially of Superman dying. So putting fans through yet another Superman death so soon will be pretty divisive already, I'm sure. But this is actually a pretty touching story of Superman as he sort of accepts his death. He reveals himself to Lois. There's some interesting things there. So I feel like this will be a lot more of a personal story than just him being stabbed by Doomsday and the two going down in a blaze of glory fight. Nothing like that. It's a little bit more, not necessarily romanticized, but it's definitely a little bit more of a slow burn. So how that will play out will be very interesting. But I don't necessarily know if they're actually adapting that All-Star Superman story or if I'm just reading a little bit too much into it. I do feel like, though, that if they did decide to choose the All-Star Superman story to use for Superman Legacy, that they're going to be choosing to use it primarily for that ending sort of final panels type of scene where it sets up the sequel. So if they're actually going to do that, I feel like that's a little bit cheesy. Yes, it's good for comic book fans, I suppose, but it's going to be pretty cheesy as well and kind of maybe a little bit divisive, a little bit of a tough sell for anybody to really be like, okay, this was a real reason to have this movie. Otherwise, it might just be another Death of Superman and then Return of Superman in the sequel. But either way, the movie's actually super exciting to be coming out. They announced, or at least anticipated to come out as of July 11th, 2025, which is way sooner than I would have anticipated. And finally, last but not least, we have my favorite Batman. No, not the Batman, though that did get an announcement online that it did get a supposed title, or at least a working title of, wait for it, The Batman Part 2. I know, absolutely crazy. I know they're going outlandish and wild with the titles here now. But it did also get a slated date to be released of October the 3rd, 2025. So if we can get both a Superman Legacy film and the Batman film, even though they're technically in separate universes in the same year, that would be crazy exciting for me. But the Batman that we'll be seeing within the main continuity of the DC universe will start with The Brave and the Bold. Now, this is based on the Grant Morrison run of comics, and the film will focus on Batman and Robin, this time being his son Damian Wayne, who was raised by the League of Assassins and Ra's al Ghul. It seems to be more of a focus on the father-son relationship within the context of the Batman and Robin story. Now, this has me very excited for a couple of reasons. Number one, with the prospect of Damian Wayne's already Robin, so that means that we've gone through several other iterations of Robin already. So we've already had Nightwing, possibly already out and established. Jason Todd has already passed and or has emerged as Red Hood, although I believe that does also happen in the Grant Morrison run, so they can probably just save that. And they also have the opportunity for Tim Drake to be transitioning out of Robin, potentially being like a Red Robin or something similar, off doing his own thing. So their world building is definitely available for them to have that pre-established. We're not going to have to watch Bruce Wayne's parents die again unless we just have a flashback for whatever reason. Though I do have one major concern that could potentially completely take Bruce out entirely. So it's here that I'm a little conflicted and confused, as the art that they used was that from the run when Dick Grayson was Batman and Bruce was dead. Now, I don't recall if Bruce had returned by the time that that particular artwork was used. I know Bruce does return, but I'm just not sure how soon or when while Dick is Batman. So how that story will play out, we will again have to wait, but either way, I think either approach will be an interesting and different take of anything that we've ever seen before. Especially if there's a Batman in the storyline of the Elseworld stories being the Batman, and this Batman being in the main continuity of the DC universe. So as my lighting changes for the 50th time during this video because I decided to record during the day instead of at night, let's go ahead and wrap this up. This was essentially the slate for Chapter 1 of the DC Universe Gods and Monsters, or at least some of the slate. James Gunn did say that not everything was revealed during this announcement video, but that was the majority of, I guess, what we can look forward to. And I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm optimistic, I'm excited about it, but it also has some things that maybe I'm not overly excited about it, but I also have to learn about. So it gives me an opportunity to learn about some new things maybe I haven't seen before or really know about, to be able to see something different, a different side of DC, different side of movies that we haven't really gotten to see really lately or at all, I would say. So I think there's a lot of things that my excitement outweighs my concern for a lot of the future of the DC universe. I'm still excited for it. I think we still have a long way to go. We still have to figure out what's going with the current slate of Shazam, The Flash, Aquaman, and Blue Beetle. Get that out of the way, and then I think we're really going to have to start making those real serious changes and looking forward to the new state of DC. I don't think it's necessarily Marvel 2.0. I do expect to see plenty of Marvel characters cross over, not Marvel characters, but Marvel actors cross over into DC. Maybe not all of them, but I do expect to see at least a few. But I think that as we get closer to the release of a lot of these projects and more information is provided, and then we can find out casting and storylines and a lot more, it will continue to be intriguing. But make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out when we do talk about that stuff. But those are essentially my thoughts across all of the announcements from DC's big announcement video that we've all been waiting for. But now I want to hear from you in the Nerdgenic community. What are you most looking forward to across this entire slate of animation, television, and movies? I want to hear what your favorite and what the most intriguing was. If it's something that you've read before, is based on something we know, or just something you totally haven't heard before today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I would love to hear them and have a discussion with you. But while you're down there, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell notification. That way you don't miss out on any future videos from me or the rest of the Nerdgenic team. And also be sure to follow us across all social media platforms at Nerdgenic. That way you don't miss out on any special news, announcements, or articles at nerdgenic.com. But in the meantime, if you want even more video content from us, check out this video right over here where I talk about the trailer for Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham. I'm, again, very cautiously optimistic about that one, also based on a comic, so check out that video. Or if you want some more history of and want to find out more about the history of comic book characters, both heroes and villains, check out the playlist right over here on the other side of the screen. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. We really do appreciate it, and we hope to see you in the next video.